that doesn't know who you are, could you introduce yourself for us?
Yes. My name's Dylan Espeseth. I'm a musician and artist and songwriter in the Seattle area. I've been making music for a few years, and I just put out my first ever full-length album a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, when in life did you start getting into music, and was there a particular moment that made you decide, oh, I really want to make my own music?
Yeah, I mean, I think I've been into music like as a concept ever since I was a little kid. I was like raised listening to music, and I feel like would be on the playground talking with my friends about music and wanting to make music. And then when I was in high school, just started learning the guitar. And I feel like that's when I really started like writing is I started just by learning cover songs of bands I liked, and I was like, oh, well, now this feels like the natural next step is to start trying to write new stuff. And then once I started doing that, I was like, oh, I really love this. I love writing more than I'd say I love learning other songs. And then I kind of went like headfirst into writing as much as possible all the time.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm not I'm musically challenged is what I call myself. I can't play an instrument whatsoever.
Uh-huh.
But but I tried to start at a young age. In like elementary school, I tried to play the clarinet and that didn't work out too well.
Oh, yeah. I started in elementary school playing the viola, and I did that for a long time, all the way through high school. And then when I was in middle school, I started learning the upright bass for jazz band in school. And then I feel like that's kind of what started getting me into like playing, like really playing music is I learned the upright bass, and then I was like, oh, well, now I should learn the electric bass. And then once I did that, I was like, okay, I like started a band with a couple of my friends where we were doing cover songs. And then I was like, okay, now I got to learn how to play the guitar. And then it kind of all just went from there. But yeah.
Yeah, how many instruments do you know how to play?
That's a good question. I feel like it fluctuates a little bit because I'm like objectively, I probably still do play the viola. I was like doodling around on it the other day. But I haven't like played it regularly in like 5 or 6 years now. So I feel like it's kind of a stretch to say I still play it. But I can definitely play a couple of songs. I would say like confidently can actually play probably like 3 or 4 instruments, and then can kind of half play, mumble my way through a few songs on like another three.
Yeah, are you gonna throw any viola into any new
I mean,
songs you produce down the
I've
road?
thought about it. I think it'd be fun to whip it out. It was down at my parents' house, kind of across the country for the last couple years, so I hadn't really had it in a while, and then I just drove it back up like a month ago. So I've been getting back into playing like lightly. I think it'd be fun to work it into some of my songs, but I think I might have to brush the rust off my viola skills a little bit first.
Yeah, I don't know that I've ever heard any songs with viola before
Yeah, I
that
feel
I
like
know of.
yeah, yeah. Sometimes it blends in with like the violin or the cello. I feel like it tends to be a like a harmony instrument in a lot of
Hmm.
like symphonic music. It'll be the violin playing like the lead part, and then the viola is always doing the harmony. But I think it's fun. I think it's got a little bit of versatility to it because it can hit those lower notes than the violin. So
It's
I'm
true.
I'm a
It's
little
true.
biased towards the viola.
You're biased towards
Yeah,
the viola. And
exactly.
I did see that you bonded with your father over vinyl. Like, did you guys collect back in the day?
Yeah, I'd say we like he started collecting a little bit back in the day, and then when I was in probably like high school he started getting real into collecting, and then that's when I got my first couple vinyls, and we would go to like the used record shops and be looking around at garage sales and everything, and started building out like a real kind of thorough collection. And then when I was like growing up, we had a couple laying around the house, and I always think just the idea of physical media is very cool to me, of having like this item that represents something that you love and are passionate about, especially with music being like something you usually can't see and feel. It's audible, having something where you can physically touch it and be like, this is a physical item that reminds me of this thing that I love and care about.
Yeah. Are you still collecting now today?
Yeah, I am. I mean, my collection is a lot smaller than my parents', but I have probably a dozen or maybe 20 different records. I want to get my collection a bit expanded, but it's fairly minimal for the time
Yeah, my
being.
collection is pretty minimal too.
Yeah.
There's some people I know that have huge collections. I know that Mike from All American Rejects has like at least 4,000 or more, he
Oh,
said in
wow.
his collection. And I'm like,
That's awesome.
that's a lot of albums.
That
Like,
is.
where do you
Yeah.
put all those?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Mine fit pretty neatly in a shelf like this big. So,
Yeah, mine fit neatly as well on this little record stand I got. I work at a
Okay,
thrift
yeah.
store and one came in. I was like, "Ooh, I'm gonna buy that."
Nice. That's fun. That's fun.
But yeah, records have definitely made a comeback for sure.
Yeah.
Did you release vinyl for your latest record or no?
Not for this album. I would love to at some point, either for this album or for one of my ones down the road. It's a little tricky, I feel like, right now, um, with like the stage I'm at, because I can get people pretty regularly to go check out the music online, but getting people to like make the leap to actually buy something. I think there's definitely some of my fans would do it, but just the idea is very intimidating to me of doing something like that. So I think at some point I certainly will. I think hopefully once I start doing more live stuff as well, that'll make it easier to sell in person as opposed to trying to kind of funnel people through. I don't really want to have to build a website right now and all of that stuff. It just seems like a
Yeah.
lot. It's kind of intimidating to me, the idea of like taking on this whole other, it's like a whole other venture in the music world of getting into like physical vinyl and CDs and everything. And I mean I did for one of my EPs in the past, I did like a limited run of CDs, and that was really fun. So I'm sure do something physical again in the future. But probably once I'm doing more like live stuff, touring and that kind of thing, when I have more face-to-face time with the audience is when I'll move to that step more
Yeah.
regularly, I'd say.
Yeah, I know a lot of physical media is kind of like some people still want the physical media, but then at the same time, it's just easier to just listen on like, an app, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's the thing. I like own a bunch of records that I could pop it on and listen to it, but half the time when I'm like, oh, I want to listen to it, I just go and pull it up on my phone anyway. But I still like having, like, owning it and still having it on my shelf and everything and knowing that I have it. But for convenience, a lot of the time I just end up streaming it or playing it on Apple Music or whatever.
It's the old school in you, right? You
Yeah,
gotta have that
exactly.
physical media.
Exactly.
That's me too. I still have all my CDs from like growing up, like the early, like late 90s to like early 2000s. I still have my big booklets full of CDs.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's crazy
There's
how we hold on to things.
Yeah, I mean there's something so special about it, I feel, of having like a physical embodiment of something that you care about and love and listen to.
Yeah, definitely. Especially like if it's a band that you're super in love with or something, you have to have that physical media of every record they have ever put out.
Yeah, absolutely. And then you never have to worry about like, oh, if it gets taken off Spotify or removed from YouTube or whatever. It's like, oh, I always have access to this regardless of what happens, you know?
Yeah, I just gotta find a CD player now. I don't have one of those anymore.
Yeah, that's the tough thing. My old car it didn't have like an aux or a Bluetooth. It only had a CD player. So I was listening to a lot of CDs. I just had like a couple dozen that I kept in my car at all times, and I would be listening to them nonstop. And then now I've got a newer car that actually has Bluetooth.
Hmm.
And I don't think it even has a CD player in it. So I got to find a new way to play my CDs because they're
Yeah,
just
I had to
sitting
get
on
a
the
new
shelf
car
now.
too, and it's got no CD player, but it's okay. It does have the Bluetooth. But my old
Yeah,
car was
yeah.
a CD player, and then I had like a FM transmitter thing
Oh, yep. I had one of those for a while as
that
well.
went
Yeah.
through like Bluetooth in my phone, so I could actually still
Yeah.
listen to like music on my apps too. But I could also physically put a CD in and just be like, you know what? I'm listening to this whole record all the way
Yeah.
through with the physical media.
Yeah, there's something so great about it. And I love the idea of listening to a record top to bottom. I mean, that's something just in general I've been trying to get myself more into this year as well, even with like just streaming and stuff, is regularly listening to albums top to bottom all the way through. And there's so many albums that I am such a big fan of, but had never actually taken the time to do that, where I'd heard every single song like separately, or I'd just put the like artist profile on shuffle on Apple Music or whatever. And going through and listening to an album like top to bottom, the way it was like released, I feel like there's something so special about that.
Yeah. What are a couple albums that you can think of lately that you've listened to from front to back?
I just did Tell All Your Friends by Taking Back Sunday, like last
Okay.
week, which I love that album. I'd heard, I think, just about every song on it I knew, but I'd never taken the time to listen to it top to bottom. And I think it recontextualizes it quite a bit. I also did A Mark, a Mission, a Brand, a Scar by Dashboard Confessional just a couple
Okay.
weeks ago for the first time, which is another album that, like, I would have, had you asked me, I'd have been like, oh yeah, I love that. One of my favorite albums of all time. And just somehow I'd never taken the time to actually, like, top to bottom listen through the whole thing. I did Marigold by Pine Grove a couple weeks ago. I have a running list in my phone that I've been keeping, but I think I'm up to like 12 in the last like 2 months. I've been trying to do like at least one or two a week.
Ah, you
Yeah.
have like a little list going.
Yeah, yeah. Exactly.
I like that idea. Maybe I should do that.
Yeah, it's fun. And it's really cool with like albums that I really do enjoy and have enjoyed for a long time to listen top to bottom and realize like, oh, there's songs that didn't pay attention to the first time I heard them. And now listening to them like in the context, it really kind of shifts the perspective, and songs that I'd maybe been kind of sleeping on have become some of my favorites, which is fun.
Yeah, I haven't listened to any albums front to back in a while, like besides ones like of people we're gonna have on the podcast, like I got if they
Yeah,
have a new
yeah.
album, I gotta listen straight through and see what I'm thinking of it.
Uh-huh.
But like the last album I listened to straight through, which is almost a daily occurrence, though I listened to this album straight through, is Story of the Year's most recent album,
Oh,
Arson.
yeah. Good album. Yeah. I haven't
I
listened to
know.
that one. I should add that to my list. I haven't done that one top to bottom, but
You
I know
should
some
do
of the
it
tracks
top to
off it.
bottom, top to bottom.
Yeah.
It's only like 34 minutes long, so it's not super
Okay.
long.
Yeah, that's like my favorite length for an album is right around the 30-minute mark.
Yeah, it's a good length because I mean, if it gets too dragged on, you start to lose interest a little, I guess people would say, kind of like social media stuff, like
Yeah.
videos.
And I mean, it depends on the artist too, because some artists I feel like really keep my attention well. But there's even like a lot of artists, I'll like listen to multiple of their albums in one sitting, or like on a plane ride, I'll listen to like three albums in a row. But I feel like there's something special about having an album that, which I mean, maybe I'm biased because this is the way that I like to write, but just kind of short and sweet and right to the point. And like there's certainly artists where they could write an album that's 3 hours long and I would sit
Oh
down and
yeah,
listen to the whole thing and love it. But just in general, I feel like a tight 30-minute album, I feel like is the perfect length for just go on a walk and listen all the way through.
yeah. I mean, we had Dan on the podcast, and I think he mentioned like they had way more material. They could have
Yeah.
they could have written like like you said, 3 albums,
Uh-huh.
out of all the material they had, but had to narrow it down. So they still got stuff that they could potentially put out for the next album. You never
Yeah,
know.
exactly, exactly. Yeah. Keeping some for the next
Gotta keep it in
batch.
your back pocket.
Exactly. Yeah, yeah.
Now, you mentioned, I've read your bio and everything. You mentioned that you stepped away from music before returning during the pandemic. Like, what brought you back creatively?
I think part of it was just being forced back home, essentially. Like when I had stepped away, it wasn't even necessarily that I didn't enjoy it. It was just that I had become so busy and I had been making music and like releasing music consistently since I was like 16. So I was, I think, kind of 19 at the time. I was in college and I was just like caught up with hanging out with friends and working on schoolwork and doing my job and all of these like little things that I just didn't have as much time to devote. And then I think being kind of forced to move back home with my parents for like a year during the pandemic and step away from school for the most part and do online classes and have all of this kind of newfound free time, I was like, oh, I got to fill this up with something, which I think kind of brought me back to when I first started making music and was in high school and just sitting in my room for hours, like, oh, I should get up to something. Let me doodle around on this guitar. And I think it kind of brought back that just like being forced into one space and not really putting pressure on like, oh, what's going to come of this, but truly just sitting and being like, let me do something purely just for fun, just to entertain myself for the next like 3 hours. And in doing that, I kind of started doodling around on the guitar again and writing songs. And I think that's really when I got very into the more production side of it and learning kind of how to produce and how to flesh out a track and all of that kind of stuff through YouTube tutorials. And I just, I think taking that time and being so isolated actually gave me like an opportunity to really learn about a lot of stuff that I'd not taken the time to learn about. And then I found once I knew more about all these production things, I think it made the process of like actually recording so much more fun because I'd still been writing through the whole time, but I just hadn't been recording or releasing anything. And then I think having this like newfound free time and being forced into home and being like, oh, there's nothing else to do. Why don't I get back into this? And really learning so much and kind of honing in on it, I think made it so much more enjoyable.
Yeah. Yeah, during the pandemic, I just became a bird watcher.
Oh, that's fun. That's awesome.
Because, that was one of the things you could do. You could leave your house eventually and go for walks, but you're not supposed to
Yeah.
go anywhere else unless it's essential.
Uh-huh.
And I'm like, oh, let me take this walk. And keep seeing birds, and I'm like, I wonder what bird that is.
Yeah. That's
It
fun.
was just a weird time because I'm like, I remember taking walks in the same area before, and I've never seen so many birds. It's like the pandemic made more birds show up or something.
Yeah, that's cool.
And so I went on Amazon, of course, and had to buy binoculars.
Of course, that's awesome.
So
What
I
was
could,
the coolest bird you saw? Did you see anything like rare?
nothing super rare, but I mean, cedar waxwings. I don't know if you know what
Okay.
kind of bird that is.
I don't think I do,
They're
but
a
it
pretty
sounds
sweet
fun.
looking bird. And I'd never seen one in the wild before, like in real life, until
Uh-huh.
the pandemic and stuff. And I was like, man, and so many warblers. I don't know if you
Oh
know
yeah.
anything about birds, but yeah,
I
lots
know
of
I'd say a pretty
warblers.
limited amount about birds, but I like birds. I think they're cool.
They are cool. For
Yeah.
some reason, there's this, I think it's an African stork that's
Uh-huh.
been hanging out in like the area near me, and I'm in Wisconsin. They're not
Okay.
supposed to be here.
Uh-huh.
And there's some random stork now wandering around different cities and counties. They
That's
don't know
fun.
where it came from.
Huh.
They figure it had to be like, either at a rescue or someone's random pet,
Oh yeah,
and it
yeah.
got free because it's got like a banding on its leg, but they can't, there's no markings on the banding.
Huh.
It's weird,
That's crazy.
but they're not a pretty bird though.
Oh,
I could send you a picture of it and you'll be like, what in the world? Everyone's
oh.
comments on the bird, they're like, it could be a prettier bird. We've had flamingos here before
Oh, that's fun.
that have
That's awesome.
gotten blown off course from like a hurricane down in Florida.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, there were flamingos here, but they left eventually. There's just
Yeah, that's
random
so
birds that
funny.
show up in Wisconsin for some reason
That's cool. I
that
love it.
aren't supposed to be here.
Uh-huh.
But yeah, I want to circle back a little though.
Yeah.
So you taught yourself production and mixing and everything and mastering and all that jazz. Now, what was the learning curve like?
I mean, I think the big thing was just learning. I guess a lot of it in hindsight seems very basic, but like when I first started like recording, like my first probably 5 or 6 songs that I put out were all recorded in GarageBand, but I didn't really like do anything to the audio. I was literally just like a couple of them were recorded on the like built-in microphone on my computer. And I was basically just recording um like guitar either straight into the computer or into my microphone once I got one, and then just like being like, okay, yeah, that's good. Which I think honestly they turned out for having very minimal knowledge of what I was doing. I feel like they turned out pretty solid, but I kind of learned eventually about EQing and how to balance things and mix them together and doing presets. And I still by no means am an expert. A lot of what I do now, I would say, is just kind of tweaking buttons and trying different presets and turning knobs until I like the way it sounds. Like half the time when I'm recording, I don't really know what the knob I'm turning is doing, but I'm like, oh, I liked it better like this. Let me do that again. Um, so I'm still by no means an expert, but I think I really learned one that there's not necessarily like actual rules. There's just like guidelines of like this is the usual way to do it because of this, but you don't have to follow those. And then also there's I when I first started, I think I had this idea that like minimalism was like the coolest way to go. Which not to have beef with minimalism now, but I just think I've since kind of come around on building out a song and like adding more to it sometimes does make it better. Where I think when I started, I had this kind of like purist idea of like, oh, if the song isn't good when it's just one poorly recorded guitar in my voice, it's not a good song, which um I think there's an element of a really good song can stand on its own as just acoustic guitar and voice, but I think building it out with production does oftentimes make it better, and that doesn't mean it's not a good song because it wasn't as good without actually being mixed, you know? Like a lot of stuff that now seems basic to me, but I just had no idea until I was watching these YouTube tutorials and being like, "Oh, you should cut this part out of the vocals because it makes it sound bad. Why didn't I think of that?" Yeah.
Yeah, I wonder how it would have been if like you were trying to learn this without YouTube.
Yeah, I think it would have been probably for I know people did it just on their own. For me, I think it would have been impossible. I would have had to be at least shown by someone like one on one then, because I don't think I would have figured out what most of the like knobs and buttons in Logic do without looking up tutorials. Even now, like having used Logic fairly regularly for like years, half the time I come up to something and I'm like, okay, I know there's a way to do this, but I don't know how, and I have to Google like how to create this kind of track in Logic or whatever, and watch a tutorial in the middle of recording and that kind of thing.
Yeah, I know that back in the MySpace days, I learned how to HTML.
Oh, whoa, that's fun.
Because back in the MySpace days, you could like do changes to your profile and all this
Yeah, yeah,
fun
yeah,
stuff.
yeah.
I don't know if you
That's
remember
super
the
cool.
MySpace days.
Not really. I was pretty young when MySpace was, I feel like, in its heyday.
Yeah, I'm an elder emo, so it
Nice.
was
Yeah.
definitely my era of
Uh-huh.
of
Yeah.
social media, like MySpace. But yeah, I learned how to HTML stuff just to make my profile look cool.
That's so cool. Yeah, that's awesome.
Well, I wish you could still do that to like your profile on like Instagram or
I know.
on
I think a
Facebook, you
lot
know?
of, yeah, a lot of elements of social media I feel like peaked with MySpace and have been a little bit downhill since.
Yep. Some of the aspects have gone downhill for sure.
Yeah.
But let's talk a bit about the album you just released in the beginning of
Yes.
April this year.
Yeah.
Silence After the Crash is a very powerful title. Now, what does that phrase personally mean to you?
Yeah, the phrase silence after the crash comes from a lyric in the last song on the album called Everything I Am. And that song as a whole, I feel like is kind of the encapsulation of what I was trying to do and say with the album, which is essentially it's about the concept of feeling afraid and anxious about world and life and careers and all of the things in my life that stress me out and make me anxious. But then finding peace and um, like easing my anxiety by the people that I love and care about and being around them, like my fiance and my friends and my family, and how being with those people, specifically that last song is about my fiance and about like I would say it's one of the only love songs I've really released. I have a few others, but it's by far my favorite kind of love song that I've released. And so I think that's very special to me. And then I think just the idea of finding someone who makes you feel at peace, who kind of silences the noise and silences the chaos of life and fear and anxiety and depression and all of these things that kind of swarm is what life's all about. And I think the album as a whole, that's kind of what it's about. The dichotomy of being afraid and looking back on the past at your mistakes and your regrets, and then finding these moments of solace with the people that you love and care about, and then also kind of how that interplays together and how being vulnerable and loving and caring about people can lead to even more anxiety and fear, but in the end it's worth it to experience all this pain and fear and anxiety to get to also experience love and the people that you care about.
Yeah. Yeah, I can hear it in the album. I can hear it all.
Thank you. Yeah.
I know my co-host can hear it too, but hopefully he makes it on here, but I'll
Yeah,
I'll
yeah.
ask. Maybe I'll just ask his questions for him.
Okay, yeah.
But yeah, you worked with Aaron Sprinkle too with that album,
I
which
did.
is kind
Yes.
of, iconic in a way because he's pretty iconic when it comes to like producing like emo albums and
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
everything. Like how was it working with such a iconic producer?
It was super cool. It was very surreal, I feel like. When I had my first meeting with him when we were kind of talking about maybe doing the album together, but we hadn't really started recording and we just met up to kind of talk about our ideas and vision for the album and all of that. I think it was very clear right away that he understood more than pretty much any other kind of producer or writer or people I'd talked to about my ideas. I feel like he understood the vision that was in my head of what I was trying to create. Um, and I think that was a super cool thing to experience aside from just how iconic he is and the stuff he's worked on. I think just that experience in and of itself of having someone who so deeply, truly understands my kind of vision and ideas about what I'm trying to create was incredible. And then also to have it be someone who's worked on incredible projects like that and is so skilled and talented in so many elements. I think that just kind of added to it of being like, wow, this person not only fully understands my vision, but I am 100% confident can execute every element of it better than I could ever imagine.
Right. Did you learn anything from him? Like, because I know you were teaching yourself how to mix and all that, but I mean, you were in the studio with him. Did he help you
I mean,
learn
I would
anything?
say, Yeah, I'd say I learned a ton. I mean, I haven't done a whole lot of recording myself since we finished the album, so I guess I haven't gotten to put it to the test yet, but even just the like elements of how to record and with him, like it was the first time I'd really worked with someone recording my vocals and having another person in the room for the most part, because even in the past when I'd worked with other producers a few times, most of it had been me recording my own vocals and sending it to them to kind of mix out and that kind of thing. So this was the first time I'd really had someone kind of coaching me through doing vocals. And I feel like that in and of itself, I learned so much about how to like deliver lyrics with emotion and intent and kind of hone that in. And I think through working with him, I delivered probably what I feel like are some of my best vocal takes and performances that before this album, I would have been like, oh no, I don't think I could sing like those notes or sing that high or whatever. And I think he really pulled that out of me, which was really cool to see. And I think helped also just increase my confidence in like my singing and harmony and all of those kind of abilities. And then just watching the way that he comps together vocals and guitar takes and does the recording and selection process was super cool. I feel like I learned so much just from being kind of in his atmosphere and observing the way he does stuff.
Yeah. Now I want to talk about a few songs off the album.
Yes.
These first two are ones that I enjoyed the most, and I definitely could relate to them. But like, so many great ones to talk about. There were so many great ones on the album, but these are my favorites. Uh, I want to start with Wine, because
Yes.
like that one's a very nostalgic song, and
Yeah.
I could hear it in the lyrics and everything. And I relive moments all the time. Like I get very nostalgic. I'm a very nostalgic person. So I totally understood that song, and it spoke to me because
Yeah.
I'm a nostalgic person. But is nostalgia something you struggle with often?
I think so. I think it's like a more recent struggle of mine. I feel like it wasn't really an issue I had long ago, but over the last like year, maybe year and a half, I feel like it's become more so, especially just thinking back on like when I was in college and in that kind of pre-pandemic or right post-pandemic era and all of these things that like memories with friends and experiences I had and kind of thinking about like, oh, all of these things I did, I'm like so glad to have done. I love these people. I love my friends. I love doing this. But now that moment's over and kind of looking back and being like, wow, I'll never get to experience that moment again. And even like the idea of, I feel like there's so many friendships where I'm like, this person was at one point like one of the most important people to me ever. And now I haven't spoken to this person in 6 months, you know? And that kind of idea of like maybe a little bit of like guilt of not keeping up with this person as well as I feel like I should have, and looking back and being like, wow, I'm so grateful for this time, but it's also like, and in a sense, it's sad to think like I care about these memories and this person so much, and despite our best efforts, I rarely get to see this person. They live across the country or across the world or whatever, and kind of that idea of people you care about naturally, I think you grow apart over time with some people and you can't always stay in the same place. And like, especially with something like college or even high school, you're bound to eventually move apart. And so that kind of experience I think was very new to me being 22, 23 when I was like writing a lot of this. Um, and experiencing these feelings kind of for the first time of like, wow, this person that I care about, I'm so glad I had these memories. I'm so happy to have experienced this. But now I'm in a different place. They're in a different place. I don't know when's the next time I'll see or speak to this person. And so it almost like reframes those memories as they're very positive memories, but there's a hint of sadness to them every time you think about it. Cause you're like, oh, I'll never recapture that feeling again in the same way.
Yeah. That's definitely everything I feel over
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
years. Like you said, high school, like there were people I kept in touch with,
Yeah.
when I graduated high school, but I mean, there's only a couple I still kind of talk to every now and then, you
Yeah,
know?
exactly, exactly. I have like a few friends from high school I still talk to, but there's so many other people from high school that I'm like, wow, at one point we were so close, and now I haven't talked to in like a year and a half, 2 years, 5 years, even some people, you know, which is
Yeah.
just a very, very strange feeling.
Unfortunately, that's just life. I mean, everyone
Yeah,
grows and goes different ways, has different paths,
yeah, for
but
sure.
but I definitely related to that song a lot. But the other song on the album was the very first song on the record, which is Nothing Happens.
Yes, yeah,
I can definitely relate to that in my life for sure, personally, when it comes to like, career frustrations and,
yeah,
self-doubt. I'm sure many other people in the world, struggle with all those things, especially nowadays, with the way the world is
Yeah, yeah.
and everything. But I am curious, did writing that song feel cathartic or uncomfortable?
I would say a little bit of both. I think the overall, I think it was probably like the hardest song I've written ever. Both in terms of like the kind of emotional element of looking and reflecting on these things that I feel like are fears and anxieties of mine, and like feeling all of this self doubt and all of that kind of thing, I think was difficult. And then also just in a like literal direct sense of like not necessarily writer's block because I was writing a lot, but just maybe overly critiquing myself and not being happy with any of the lyrics. I wrote the first verse and chorus to no music, just like basically mumbled it into my phone in the grocery store, I believe. And then came home and like put the guitar part to it and like wrote that in like one afternoon. Basically, I wrote that whole first verse and chorus, and that part came so easily and flowed out of me so quickly. And I really liked that part. But then I think that added this kind of extra pressure as I was finishing the song of, okay, I'm really happy and really proud of this first section. How do I follow that up? And then I felt like I was just kind of fighting myself on. I'd come up with a line and be like, no, no, that's not it. I don't like that. That's not good enough. And then eventually I kind of pieced it together. But I think overall I wrote like probably 20 verses and then cut it down to like the three that are in there and kind of parsed out different pieces from all the different verses. Because I think I was just really overly critiquing myself and being unsatisfied with a lot of my ideas. But in the end, I think kind of pushing through that and forcing myself to kind of finish it out, I think it's by far got some of my favorite lyrics I've ever written in that song.
Yeah. What was it in the grocery store that made you go, aha, I think I like this as a lyric, or made you think of the lyric?
That's a good question. I think for a long time I've had this like idea in a note as my phone of like trying to figure out exactly how to word it, of like something about like breaking down in the grocery store, just because I feel like it's gotten better over time, but for a long time, like I don't know why, maybe like something with the pandemic or what, but just like being in the grocery store and grocery shopping would like make me so anxious every single time for like more or less no reason. Like there would be no reason for me to feel stressed out, but I'd just like walk into the grocery store and like a wave of anxiety would flood me and I'd be like, okay, I gotta figure out how to handle this. So I feel like I've had like multiple times where I'm like, for no reason, just like stressing out in the grocery store and like, okay, I gotta get through this. I don't know why, but I'm about to like break down in the middle of the produce aisle, literally. So I had that like concept for a long time. And then I was just like walking through the store kind of humming. And I don't know what exactly it was that like triggered me to start singing those lyrics, but just something about it. Um, I was kind of singing the melody and then I was like, "Oh, no, 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 no," and then I eventually just came to the, I want to be an artist, but the truth is I'm not. I want to be something that I'll never become, etc. And I think as soon as I like kind of came up with that first line, I was like, oh, this is good. And I remember being in one of the like store aisles, just holding up my phone with like voice memos and like mumbling the first couple of lines into there and being like, now I'm humming in the produce aisle. And I was like, okay, yeah, I feel like that's definitely something that I want to hold on to and flesh out a little bit.
Humming in the produce aisle.
Yeah.
It's funny how things just come to be out of nowhere sometimes.
Yeah, it really is. It's, yeah, I don't know what was making me feel it in that specific moment, but there was, I mean, I think there's something to me that's always kind of, for some reason, melancholy about the grocery store, is you're just like in a place with so many other people living their own lives and like the same vibe of, I feel like it's almost the extreme of being surrounded by people, but no one's really paying attention to each other. Everyone's so focused on their own thing that you're just like standing there and getting passed on both sides by people that are like so honed in on finding one thing that I don't know. There's something about it that just always makes me like, I don't know, makes me start thinking about the world in a weird way, I guess. And for some reason, whatever I was feeling that day came to fruition all at once.
Well, I understand anxiety at a grocery store because I get that way too, but it depends on the store though.
That's true. That's true.
Depends on the store because there's this one grocery store up here that every time I go to it, it's so busy and people are gonna like run you over with their carts and it gives me anxiety just stepping over the threshold.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. Some stores are not as bad, but sometimes I'm like, yeah, there's so much going on in here. They're playing loud music, everyone's zooming past me. I'm trying to find the right brand of chip and I can't find it, and I'm getting passed on both sides by people looking for
Yeah.
the pretzels, and I don't know. Something
A-
about it's like
And I'm that
such a
person
small
too.
thing, but
I'm a very like casual shopper. So I'm
yeah,
like usually when I go grocery shopping, I'm not in a complete hurry, but everyone
yeah,
around me is in a hurry and I'm just trying to mosey along like all slowly and just look around. Oh, well, maybe there's some new food that I haven't tried yet or something, like
yeah,
but yeah, the one grocery store up here, I'm like, you got to go at the right time of day, I guess.
for sure. Yeah, yeah.
All right, so there's a few songs that Chris really like had really spoken to him. But since he's
Uh-huh.
not here, I will ask them for him because I know he'd probably want to know.
Cool. Yeah.
But the first song he gave me or wrote a question for was I'm really bad at being alone. Now he
Yes.
said it's a fantastic song and having your shit together, but when you're missing someone because they're away from you strikes home for him. Uh,
Yes.
can you give him more insight into that song?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like that's kind of a spot on interpretation, but I think when I wrote that song, I would say in general, I feel like people have been kind of, which I'm generally kind of the belief that well, like once the song's out there, people can interpret it however they want, whatever speaks to them. But I've seen a couple people like think of it or kind of interpret it to be like maybe more of a breakup song, where to me it's almost more of a love song, I would say, of having a person that you love and care about, and then the moment that they're gone, you feel like you're no longer yourself. And I feel like that's kind of what it's about to me. And I'm trying to remember the specific time I wrote it, but I can't right now. But I know it was something with my fiance was either out of town or just had been working a lot, and I just hadn't seen her in like a week. And I think there was this element of specifically like I was like, okay, I'm working from home. I'm kind of isolating myself. The one person I feel like I spend the most time with, I haven't seen in a week because she's off working and doing all these things and socializing and talking to people. And I've just been stuck in this room by myself. And kind of this idea of like when I'm left to my own devices completely on my own, I feel like I always end up sabotaging myself. And like objectively, I know if I like would get up and go outside and go for a walk, it would be way better for my mental health. But when I'm completely on my own, I end up just sitting in my room for 12 hours and eating what is, I think, barely legally considered food, just downing canned, I don't know, cans of soup and pre-dried ramen and all of these things and living, I feel like, an objectively unhealthy lifestyle and kind of this idea of like, I have no reason to be feeling this way, but as soon as the people I love are gone, I feel like I end up sabotaging my own life to the point of spiraling out. And when I'm left alone with my own thoughts, I end up for some reason sabotaging my own head when there's no reason to be feeling this way, but I'm just like, oh, I'm by myself, time to overthink everything. And I end up overthinking myself into oblivion. And I'm like, oh, I haven't talked to this person in a week. I should probably assume now that they hate me since I haven't spoken to them in a week, which is obviously not the case. But when I'm left to my own devices alone in my room, I feel like that's always the direction my anxiety takes me.
Yeah. It's funny you mentioned self-sabotage because that too is one of the songs Chris really liked.
Oh, nice. Yeah. Segue.
He said it's very relatable and everything, and that he said doing things that feel like self-preservation but end up damaging you and relationships.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, where did the inspiration come from that song? I mean, it kind of almost sounds like it came a little bit from the other song.
Yeah, I would say it's a very similar place of yeah, this idea feeling like I I know all the things I should be doing that would be good for me, and I know that I'm capable of doing them, but for some reason I keep holding myself back from it. And almost this, with that song specifically, I feel like it's almost this deep seated idea of like, oh, if I really try my best and fail at something, then I feel like I've failed. But if I only try a little bit and then sabotage myself and I fail, it's like, oh, I only failed because I didn't really try, which is, I think, objectively not a great way to go about things. But I feel like it's a thing I kept finding myself doing. And still to this day, I feel like find myself doing of going like, well, I'm gonna hedge my bet a little bit, and if I really try and fail, then it's like, okay, I failed. But if I try and then I'm like, oh, actually, no, I'm not really trying, and like hold myself back on purpose, then I'm not really failing. I just didn't succeed because I didn't do these things. And had I done them, I could have probably done it, but I guess we'll never know because I didn't try. And I feel like specifically with my career at the time I was writing that song, I feel like it was very like I was afraid to really commit and go in on music and like give it my all because I was like, oh, if I try and it doesn't work out, then I'm going to be a failure. Whereas if I'm like, oh, I released a song, but I didn't promote it at all. Had I promoted it, it probably would have been good, but I just didn't, and like intentionally hold myself back, then I don't have to feel like I failed. I just can be like, oh, I didn't really try.
Yeah. I think I need to like take a little note from that song and stop self-sabotaging myself when it comes to me like making like social media posts because
Yeah,
I'm so bad at it and I get in my own head all the time
yeah,
and I feel like I sabotage myself.
yeah. I
And
feel
that's
like
why it takes me a bazillion takes before I feel okay with something. But I've been told I should just do it and be yourself and there you go.
yeah, I feel like I do the same thing. I'm like, if I do an earnest attempt at this, it just feels so like embarrassing that I'm like, I almost feel like I need to like undercut it and like I just end up overthinking everything when in reality it's like, yeah, I should just go for it and like be a little vulnerable. And if people think I'm corny and cringe, like that's fine.
It's the internet. There's always going to
Yeah,
be someone that thinks you're cringe,
yeah,
no
exactly,
matter what you
exactly.
do.
To be cringe is to be free.
It is true. It is true. Now, the last song that really spoke to Chris was Way Too Much. It gives him a vibe of overthinking again, everything possible, and having it weigh you down. Could you shed some light on what went into that song for him?
Yeah, that song I wrote right as I was about to finish college. And so it was very much this idea of like feeling very afraid of the future, very afraid of the unknown, which I think is a very common theme in a lot of my songs because it's one of I think the big things I feel just in general in life is afraid of the things that I don't know and don't know what I'm supposed to be afraid of, which scares me obviously, and then it just creates this whole spiraling cycle. But I think with that song in particular, it was this feeling of almost a follow up to my song Falling Faster of like, which has the lyric, I've been dodging my friends' calls and I'm sorry to them all. And then Way Too Much is kind of like the follow up of now I'm scared no one's even gonna call me, that I'm gonna ignore my friends and I'll no longer be living near them and seeing them regularly from school and work and all these things, that they're gonna completely stop calling. They're gonna stop noticing that I've not responded and move on with their lives without me. And everyone else is going to go off and thrive and live their best lives. And I'm going to be stuck here still overthinking that same thing that I did last week, overthinking that conversation I had, overthinking that mistake I made. And I'll be so caught up in my own behavior and my own overthinking that I'll be paralyzed into staying in the same spot while everyone else is out thriving and living their best life and going on and pursuing their dreams.
Yeah. See, just talking about the songs makes me think to myself, I'm like, man, this album really is super relatable to a lot of people,
Yeah, yeah.
or for a lot of people, whichever it is.
Uh-huh.
But like, is there anything that you hope that people take from this album
I
at
mean, I
all?
think the big thing that I feel like I can give people with this album, hopefully, and I feel like I've gotten from other music is just the idea of not being alone in your feelings and fears. And like I can think of so many times when I've felt so kind of lonely and isolated and like, wow, no one's ever felt this bad. No one's ever felt this afraid. No one's ever felt these feelings I'm feeling right now. I'm the first person to ever be anxious about the future, which is obviously not true. And then I listen to music and I'm like, oh, wait, this person has felt that. This person has experienced that. I'm not the first person to feel that. This person felt that. They lived through it. They're still living their life. I think I can live through this and keep living my life and keep pursuing this dream and this goal and whatever I'm going for. And it's I feel like a very human thing to be like, oh, I'm the first person to ever feel this, but I think it's also a very human thing to want community and to want to be seen. And so I feel like finding that music and seeing like, oh, I'm not the first person who's ever felt this, someone else has, and they're still here. And in a lot of cases, they've become better for having experienced or having lived that or having felt that feeling. And I hope I can kind of give that to someone else where they feel like, oh, I'm feeling this thing. I don't even necessarily understand what I'm feeling. And then hear the song and be like, oh, that's what I'm feeling. Someone else has felt this. Someone else has put it into words and they made it through and they're still living their life and they're still surviving and thriving and following their dreams. I can make it through this feeling, make it through this moment.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
For sure. Now,
Yeah.
this album does have from front to back all amazing songs. I loved them all.
Thank you.
Uh, was there one song particular on the album that was harder to write than the others?
I think lyrically, Nothing Happens was probably the hardest to write, just because of trying to like follow up the feelings and everything on that one. Um, Another one that was hard to write, I'm trying to think. I think probably the other one that was the hardest to write, but also maybe very easy in a way, but would be Thoughts. Because when I first wrote that song, I wasn't even necessarily planning on releasing it. I had just kind of written it and was like, oh, this is kind of fun. And I think I posted it on TikTok and captioned it like, oh, I feel like this song could go in a camp rock movie or something like that. And it was just the first verse and chorus. And I hadn't really finished the song. And I was like, okay, yeah, that's it for that. I'm probably not going to finish it. And then when I went to the studio and started working with Aaron, he had asked, like, oh, do you have anything that's like maybe a softer, slower vibe? And so I played him like just what I had of that. And he was like, that's great. I really want to work on that. We should do that one. And I think he really saw the vision for that song, which ended up becoming one of my favorites before I even did for the most part, um, which was super cool. But then because of that, I had only written the first verse and the chorus. It didn't have a bridge or a second chorus. And so that one I think suffered a little bit from the same feeling of like, oh, I have this one section I really like, and now I have to come up with another section to kind of follow it up, which I think just in general, I'm always like afraid of writing second verses because I'm like, I don't want to overly rehash what I did in the first verse, but I also want something that feels like it's just as good as the first verse when I really like the first verse. So I think I just ended up overthinking a lot of it. Um, and then I ended up like getting it together and having it. But I think with that one, it was a little bit the same thing of kind of being afraid to follow up something I really liked and fill in that blank for the verse and the bridge with something that I wasn't as sure about. And I ended up pulling the bridge was a different song originally that I had started writing, and it was going to be its own thing. And then I was like, oh, actually, what if I take this that was originally a chorus to a different song and make it the bridge and kind of tweak it around. Um, and so I was able to get that one, but that was, I feel like, the other one that was kind of hard just because it's always stressful for me to try and follow up something that I really like with a second verse.
Yeah. That's kind of like poetry, though. It's like you want to get that, if you're doing like something that rhymes, you want to make sure it makes sense,
Yeah, yeah,
in that part of the poem.
for
You can't
sure.
just like
Yeah,
rhyme words. I mean, you could. You could
yeah,
just
yeah.
rhyme random things. I mean, there is a lot of rap music out there these days that I swear it's just the same thing over and over again.
Uh-huh.
I don't know if you've ever noticed that, if you listen to any rap that has come out lately.
Yeah, yeah. I feel like there's very much an idea in I feel like it's in music in general of like something I feel like I've done as well where I have a like an idea and I'm like, okay, this is a line that I have that I like and this is a line that I have that I like. How do I fit them together? And then I like get overly concerned with actually fitting them together and finding like a line that has the right amount of like syllables and rhymes and then I'm like, okay, I'll figure out what it means later, you know? Um I feel like there's a couple on the album too where I feel like I low-key did that a little bit where I would like in reality, what does that really mean? I'm not sure, but it gets from point A to point B, and I feel like that's kind of the main thing. Or like lines that I think a big thing which I actually like. I feel like there's songs that do it that I don't like and songs that do it that I do like it. But where it's like more vibe based where in reality I'm like, what does that lyric mean? I have no idea, but like what does that lyric make me feel? That I do know, you know? Of like, oh, this lyric, like objectively, I can't tell what it's saying, but it's makes me feel this certain emotion. And I feel like that kind of services the song. So I feel like that can be like a hit or miss thing too, but I've definitely noticed that as well.
Yeah. As long as you're not repeating the same line over and over again throughout the whole song, we're good. We're good, right?
Right, yeah.
Now, are there any lyrics either within the emo scene or from outside of it that have really stuck with you or really mean something to you?
Oh, that's a great question. Um, I think lately I've been really into Pine Grove, the band, and there's one song that I just heard for the first time like 3 days ago that I've been listening to nonstop. Um, that's called "Size of the Moon," and it has a lyric that's essentially like it's got a couple lyrics that I really like, but one of them is, "Do you remember when we made a bunch of space in the living room and moved ourselves around in it," or something like that?" And I really like just that, like, it's a very, I think, like kind of flowery way of describing just like moving all the stuff to the corners and dancing around in the living room. And I really like that lyric. I feel like it has this distinct feeling of like nostalgia, and then it follows up with like trying to, I don't want to butcher the lyrics too bad, but I think the next lyric is "That's how my heart resumed." And it like hits the perfect rhyme. And I think it just really speaks to something I feel all the time of like this one specific moment has like brought me back to life, you know? And so that's like a song that's the first one that comes to mind just because that's a song I've been listening to like nonstop the last 3 days. And that verse specifically, I think is just such a great way of describing like that specific feeling of like dancing in the living room with someone, and it just fully brings you back to life and changes the way you're looking at everything.
Yeah. Yeah. Dancing in the living room makes me think of Owl City,
Oh
Fireflies, when they're
yeah.
like talking like, a foxtrot above
Oh
my
yeah, yeah.
head, a sock hop beneath my de bed.
Uh-huh.
And I'm just like, oh, that I always remember that word, that
Yeah.
lyric line.
I
There's
think
so
in
many good
general,
lyrics out there, right?
yeah, I think in general, I love, um, I think probably because it's one of the like, at least for me, like harder things to write is like a good love song, which is I think why I'm very proud of the last song on the album, Everything I Am, is I feel like it's my favorite like kind of love romantic song that I've written. But for me, it's such a hard thing because I feel like love is such a big, grand feeling, and it's so central to the human experience that whenever I'm trying to describe it, I like want to be as like honest and real and vulnerable as I can. But I also feel like it's been written about so much that I feel like every time I say it, I'm like, I want to say something new that hasn't been said, but because it's such like a core feeling to the human experience, I feel like everything there is to say has been said, which I feel like isn't even necessarily true. But every time I try and write it, I'm like, oh, that's too cliche. That's corny. So I feel like when I hear like a good lyric, either that I write or that someone else writes, that's like a good love song lyric, I'm always like, those are always my favorite when I feel like someone captures the feeling of love and that element in a way that I feel like I haven't heard before. I feel like that always is what wows me the most, to be able to describe something that's like such a core thing to the human experience in a way that I hadn't already thought of or that no one else had already thought of.
Yeah. Yep, lyrics are, where would we be without lyrics in all
Yeah,
actuality?
yeah.
Where would we be? But what was it about emo music specifically that connected with you emotionally growing up?
That's a good question. I mean, I think like in large part, I was just raised on a lot of emo music to begin with. My dad introduced me to so much of it that it felt like it was just constantly kind of the soundtrack to my life in a way that it almost feels like the default in a lot of senses where
Hmm.
people will be like, "Oh, like I don't know, this song's so emo, like how'd you get introduced to this?" And I'm like, "Oh, this is like in my mind that's what the core of music is, you know?" And I think it goes back to the same like lyrical thing of like I love when songs are just so, which I mean it's a thing in all genres, but I feel like I love the idea of songs being just so vulnerable and honest and saying like exactly what you're thinking and feeling, even, or maybe even especially when it's vulnerable and embarrassing and scary. And I think one thing emo does well is sharing those feelings and taking them to the like absolute extremes, and taking like a teenage heartbreak, which objectively, when you're like me now being 24, almost 25, thinking about like a teenage heartbreak, it's one thing. But when you're 16 and you're feeling it for the first time, it like truly in every way does feel like the end of the world and no one has ever felt this bad before. And so I think people kind of like clown on emo music sometimes for that element of like taking these like the idea of your first date being the most significant thing that's ever happened to you. Um, and it's like, oh, that's like kind of silly. But then in reality, when you're like in that moment, that like is the biggest thing that's ever happened in your entire life is like your first date and your first heartbreak and all of these things. And I think like emo music, for better or for worse, is like very unafraid to be, I think, overly dramatic and like take everything to the extreme and really ham up the emotion, every single emotion, like to the 10,000th degree.
Yeah. Who were some of your dad's favorite bands that he
Um,
introduced you to?
I mean, I would say his like all-time favorite artist is Bob Dylan, so that was like definitely one of them. And then like more in the like emo space, I think Dashboard Confessional is a huge one that he put me onto that he's seen live a bunch of times and now I've gotten to see live a few times and I love. Taking Back Sunday, which I mentioned earlier, is another big one. And then actually a bunch of the stuff, like a lot of bands that Aaron had produced for, he is the one who showed me originally, like Anne Berlin and MXPX as well. Oh, nice.
I have my
Yeah.
Anne Berlin shirt on,
Oh,
honestly.
that's sick. Yeah. I love Anne Berlin. And like Never Take Friendship Personal is like one of my favorite albums ever. And it's so cool. Like that was an album that my dad introduced me to many years ago. And then Aaron had worked on that one and produced it. And so getting to work with him was like a very full circle moment in that element, which was also super cool.
Yeah, it's a fantastic album too.
So good. Yeah.
It's so good. One of my favorites. One of my favorites. That's for sure.
Yeah.
That one's a good one too, front to back.
Yeah. That's a great one front to back. I agree. That's one of the other ones I've listened to pretty recently for the first time front to back.
Now, I want to talk a little bit more about bands that, you got into growing up. Like, uh, have you come across like not any bands that you grew up with? We've talked a little bit about that. Have you come across any newer emo bands, during this emo revival that you feel deserve more recognition?
I mean, I I guess this is I don't I mean, I think they always deserve more recognition would be Modern Baseball is like one of my favorite bands of all time. And I think they are certainly like I feel like in a lot of ways kind of the face of a lot of emo revival on like TikTok, especially right now. But I think that was like one of the bands that originally got me into this world like again, kind of growing up on a lot of that early 2000s stuff and then kind of going out and being like, okay, now I'm independent. I'm 15, 16. I want to find my own music. And then stumbling across like Modern Baseball and the Front Bottoms and Mom Jeans and that kind of like Midwest emo space of 2017 and all of that kind of thing, I think really was like a huge turning point for me in my musical journey of what music I wanted to make and what music I wanted to write and all of that. And then I'd say the like other one that there's quite a few that I think deserve more recognition in like the folk punk space, which I think is probably these days one of like my very favorite like subgenres, I guess. And I think there's just so much good like acoustic emo music out there that I think gets so slept on. Um, and like a lot of my favorite songs and bands are these like acoustic emo bands. There's this artist named Doan, that I think he and I are mutuals on TikTok, but he has some of my like favorite emo stuff right now. That's all like acoustic, I would say, in the halfway point between like folk punk and Midwest emo that I really rock with. I feel like he 100% deserves more recognition. Trying to think of other good ones to shout out. Another one of my favorites right now is Saturdays at Your Place. Um, they're a great band that I really love, and I feel like they also have had I feel like quite a good bit of success, especially with some of the TikTok stuff and that kind of thing. But I feel like everyone always deserves more, especially when you're making that good of music.
Yeah. Yeah, there's something different about acoustic, music than regular music. Like I know for me I have to like be in a mood,
Yeah,
you know, but it definitely hits differently, and that's for
yeah,
sure a thing. But yeah, some
yeah.
acoustic stuff is great to throw in there. I do love acoustic like versions of other songs that were
Oh yeah.
not originally acoustic. I love when bands do that.
I mean, a lot of the time, I think my like favorite music is that like acoustic emo stuff, and I think it's almost the culmination of kind of the two worlds of music that I grew up on, which is like the folk stuff of like both the old folk stuff of like Bob Dylan and all of that space, as well as like the Lumineers and Mumford and Sons, which is when I was first learning how to play guitar, that's exactly like the stuff I was learning how to cover. And then the like emo, like Taking Back Sunday, Dashboard Confessional, Reliant K side of things, and then getting that kind of meld right in the middle where it's got that like big emo feel, but like very acoustically driven is I feel like that's my sweet spot of my very, very favorite music tends to be right in the heart of those two Venn diagrams.
Yeah. Now, why do you think emotionally honest music connects so deeply with listeners right now?
I think it's just that people want to be like seen. And I think like the more honest and specific you are a lot of the time, the more people feel like it can connect to them, which I feel like that was like a thing I learned just in the last like couple years because it almost feels counterintuitive to say, oh, this super specific, hyper specific feeling of this place and this time in my life where I was and talking to these people and like really describing every element of that. It's like, oh, well, other people weren't in this place at this time talking to these people. But I think when you are go like so far in that direction that you're being like so honest about where and when you were and who you were talking to and what you were feeling and why you were feeling that way, that then just for me as like a listener, if I listen to a song where someone's super specifically talking about this place they were and when and where, it's I can easily fill in the blanks of like, oh, I've been in this place talking to this person and feeling this thing. And they're you're able to such an extreme like embody that feeling even if you weren't actually there that I think being as open and honest and vulnerable and like real as possible I think allows other people to feel it even more deeply than if you were just like, oh, I'm feeling bad today, which is like, I mean, also I feel like I've written lyrics that are just like I'm sad and I don't know why, which is like a very very real feeling as well. But I think when you can be like, oh, I'm feeling this specific anxiety about this thing, even if someone else is not feeling anxious about that thing, I think being that real and raw about that makes it that much easier for someone else to kind of plug in their feeling and be like, oh, I'm feeling really anxious about this thing, but we're both feeling the same thing from different directions. And I think that like honesty and vulnerability makes it even easier for other people to connect to that same emotion.
Yeah. And I know a lot of songs, a lot of people interpret differently too.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's also a factor. Like maybe you're singing about something and someone else is thinking a completely different like version in their own head, you know?
Yeah.
But so I gotta ask this question before I ask this next question. Now, your album came out in April. Are you planning on doing any shows at all
Y-
with the album?
yes. I don't have any like booked that I can announce right now, but I did one just a couple weeks ago that was like an acoustic set up here in Seattle, and I'm scheduling a couple more like acoustic shows this spring summer hopefully. And then I really would like to get to do some sort of tour open for someone with a full band again. I've done a small handful of full band shows. I did like my first one last summer, and I'd never done like my original music with a full band. So that was a very cool experience. And I've now done like three or four of those, and I really want to get into doing more of those. So hopefully I'll be announcing some of those soon with like a full band. But definitely I'll be having more acoustic shows coming up fairly soon, and then hopefully sometime soon-ish, some more like full band shows playing the songs I feel like closer to how they're actually presented on the record.
Yeah. Well, hopefully you get out on tour then, right?
Yeah.
Hopefully. But speaking of tours still, now if you could put together a dream tour, maybe you and maybe like three, maybe four other artists. We'll give you four artists to go out on
Okay.
tour with. Who would
Yeah.
you want to go out on tour with? You don't have to be the headliner.
Okay.
You can be the opener if you want, or you can headline if you'd like.
Okay. Okay. I feel like I'll say I'm the opener. I feel like one of them would definitely be probably Mom Jeans. Um, I feel like they're so good, and I saw them live at one point, and it was a great set. Um, Also, who else would be good for this lineup? I feel it's gonna be, I think, maybe not the most cohesive lineup. It's gonna be very tailored towards my interests, and I everyone that has the exact same musical interest as me will love this tour, and other people might not, and I think that's fine. And then I'd say Slaughter Beach Dog, the band, would be also on this tour. And then to round it out, I think Reliant K, which I
Okay.
feel like it's three bands that are like all somewhat emo rock adjacent, but not fully in there. And I think that'd be a fun tour for me specifically to open and then just go stand in the crowd and watch the other three bands play. That would be my dream.
Yeah, I've never heard of this Slaughter band you're talking about.
Oh, they're do you know Modern Baseball?
I never really got into them, but I know
Okay.
who they are. I know
Yeah,
that
it's
didn't they kind of like call it quits and now they're coming back or something?
yeah, well they called it quits, and the frontman from Slaughter Beach Dog is one of the frontmen from Modern Baseball.
All right, all right.
Yeah,
Okay.
but they're definitely like one of my all-time favorite bands now. I feel like they're doing it's much more folky, a little bit more kind of stripped back acoustic, a lot of it, but kind of in that same sphere, like emotionally and lyrically.
Yeah. That would be an interesting tour for sure. I mean,
Yeah,
people don't have to like your choices. It is your dream tour.
yeah. I was gonna say, I think it like the sonically, I feel like it is a little bit all over the place, but I think if people have my same music taste, this would be also their dream tour. So I feel like if it's my dream tour, there's got to be at least a few other people out there that are like, oh, this is my
Hey,
goated dream tour of
it's
all
okay
time.
for it to be all over the place. I mean, Hawthorne Heights just kind of did their little they don't even know if they're still on tour. I think they're done with tour, but they said they brought on the bands they did because they wanted every single band to be different on tour.
Yeah, and I think that's so fun. I think there's like such a element to having like diverse sounds in like one show that I think is so fun. And I think there's also an element to being able to introduce people to other music that they might not know, but they would
Hmm.
like. And I think they're very much all over the place. But I think if you're into like one of these bands, I think you could get into the music of all of these bands. I
Yeah.
think even if you're not like huge on it, I feel like you could be like, oh, I'm a big Slaughter Beach Dog fan. I feel like you'd at least like some of the Mom Jeans stuff or vice versa, or some of my stuff, you know? I think there's definitely like a place where they overlap, but not so much that it's going to be like all sonically the same. And I think there's something fun to that.
Yeah. Well, if you go out on tour on your dream tour someday, hopefully I can come and then maybe I'll, enjoy the whole show.
Yeah, there we go.
But we are down to the final question that we ask all the guests that come on the podcast. And I'm kind of hoping you have a good answer for this because I've been looking at the posters behind you and I'm like, he might have
Ooh,
a good answer for this.
okay.
But the last and final question is, what is your favorite dinosaur?
Oh, that is a good question. This, see, the tough thing is, it's not a dinosaur, but the mosasaur was for a long time. I only learned like 6 months ago, probably, that it's not actually a dinosaur. But that was for a long time my favorite dinosaur, which is the big like whale one. I think it's
Hmm.
in Jurassic World. Um, but that was my favorite dinosaur for a long time. And then I found out it's not actually a dinosaur, and that was kind of devastating. Um, so maybe, oh, now I gotta remember what it's. I think probably the Spinosaur would be my now favorite dinosaur because it's actually a dinosaur. But if we're counting any prehistoric dinosaur adjacent animal, I think it's still the mosasaur.
Yeah. So you got the really, really big dinosaur that swims in the
Yes,
ocean, which isn't a
exactly.
dinosaur.
Exactly.
But yet it was in Jurassic World.
Yeah,
Although pterodactyls are technically dinosaurs,
that's true. Yeah.
which people are always like, they're not?
Yeah. Which it seems counterintuitive because the like dinosaurs are birds, but the ones that actually were flying around aren't dinosaurs. I don't know. It breaks
Well,
down in
yeah,
my
because they
brain.
say chickens, are a relative of a
Yeah,
dinosaur,
exactly.
but the chickens don't fly
Right. I guess yeah, that's the breakdown.
because they're little velociraptors, remember?
Uh-huh.
Feathered raptors. But mine's a brachiosaurus and
Oh,
Chris's is
that's a
an
good pull.
ankylosaur. That's what
Oh,
his is.
I'll have to
So
look up a Kylosaur. I don't know if I know what that looks like.
Ankylosaur, yeah, it's like the armored one with the club tail.
Oh, okay. Yes, yes.
Yeah, that's his. That's like there's a whole family of Ankylosaur and even like brachiosaurs, like long necks and everything. There were
Uh-huh.
so many dinosaurs, and I'm sure they haven't discovered every single one.
Yeah, I'm sure there's probably, yeah, there's got to be a bunch they haven't found yet.
Did you watch the documentary on Netflix?
I did. I watched that just a couple weeks ago, actually.
Yeah, I keep trying to get my husband to like watch the last two episodes because we only got through two, and I'm like, I need to
Uh-huh.
finish this.
Yeah, I watched it all, I think just about all in one sitting over like one night for like 6 hours. I was just sat watching the whole thing.
Yeah, my husband gets this way where he's like, I don't want to finish things like right away. He's not a binger, I'm a binger.
Okay, yeah. I would say I'm definitely a binger. When I find something that I'm like really enjoying watching, I sit down and watch like the whole thing. I'll finish like a series in like 2 days.
Yeah.
I just did that with Andor, the Star Wars show.
Okay.
I had like heard from so many people that it was so good, and I hadn't watched it at all. And I just yesterday finished the whole first season, and I watched it in like 3 days. Just every night I was sitting down and watching like 3 episodes.
Yeah. Yeah, we didn't even finish Stranger Things yet.
Oh wow. I feel like
And
that
yet
one.
we didn't get any teased, we didn't get any like spoilers on online, which
Okay,
is
that's good.
shocking.
That's good. Yeah.
I feel like it was really hyped up and like I think I slightly saw that people were almost a little disappointed with the way it ended, but I
Yeah.
don't know. We got to finish it at some point and find out for
Yeah. I'd say
ourselves.
definitely worth finishing. Yeah, for
Well, yeah, I
sure.
gotta finish it. I can't leave it unfinished.
Yeah,
That
you can't
wouldn't
leave
be
it
fun.
on a cliffhanger like that.
No, 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 no. I was just sad that Eddie never came back.
Yeah.
So sad. But the dinosaur question was the final question. Now, is there anything you'd like to add on before we end recording?
I don't think so. I feel like I've sufficiently yapped a little bit.
Yeah, we have a tendency of going slightly long on our conversations, but it's because we have all these things and we get a little sidetracked sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much to say. Yeah.
There is. We could go on for hours and hours.
Exactly.
But everyone that's still listening or watching this, you should definitely check you out on all the socials. I heard that TikTok's your most popular.
Yes. Yeah. TikTok's my most popular. You can follow my TikTok. It's DJ Espeseth. And then my Instagram is Dylan Espeseth. YouTube, Spotify, Apple Music, everything else. I'm Dylan Espeseth. Check it out.
Espeseth. It's a hard word to say, a hard
It
last
is.
name to
It's
say.
tough. There's a lot of S's in there.
Yeah,
Which I used to have a really bad overbite when I was younger, which made it a little bit tough to do all the S's as well. But I've been wearing my retainers to try and get back on it.
yeah. Well, it sounded fine to me.
Okay, good, good.
But yeah, thanks so much for coming on. It's been a pleasure chatting with you. I hope